Hello and welcome to Survival of the Fittest Ethics and Professional Self-Care in Social Work presentation. My name is Terricka and I am so delighted to share this space with you right now, especially during a time where there's a lot going on, various pandemics that's going on in the world. And as we know it, things are going on with our clients, so that means things are going on with social work. So I'm excited to share with you about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is ethics and self care. And I think that it's very befitting and timely to share a presentation about this information in terms of social work, just with all this going on. And as I ponder about the topic or the theme for the IFSW 2020 Social Work Conference, I can't help but to think that professional self care and social work, we should definitely be talking about that as we talk about and as we forecast for the next few years of social work and as we shape the agenda for global social work. Professional self care and social work definitely needs to be a part of the conversation. And today we're going to talk about why. But I want to share a little bit about me. My name is Terricka Hardy. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I am the owner of a private practice consulting firm that works with various organizations to help them foster and promote professional self care within their organizations and also within their employees as well, and also professional resilience. I'm a subject matter expert in professional self care and resilience and overall wellness as well. Some of the things that I also provide professional development for various organizations and for social workers as well in the U.S. Now, I'm also passionate about ethics as well, as I serve on the National Association of Social Workers National Ethics Committee as a member there. So, again, I'm delighted to have you, and we're going to talk about some important things today. So, let's get started. So here's what we're going to discuss today. We're going to discuss self-care as an ethical consideration, and we're going to discuss why would self-care be considered ethical. We're going to discuss the signs and the symptoms of professional impairment. We're going to also define professional self-care and what that actually looks like. And then we're going to identify professional self-care strategies that are relatable to social work, both at the macro level, at the meso level, and at the micro level as well. So, again, we're going to get started. I entitled this workshop or this presentation, Survival of the Fittest. When I entitled it Survival of the Fittest, I wasn't necessarily talking about building strong muscles. I wasn't necessarily just talking about the physical appearance only. I thought about the changes that's going on. I thought about how social work 10 years ago, when I was in the profession 10 years ago, how it's completely changed, how technology has shaped and had its implications on the professional social work. And now, as we speak right now, currently, how the various pandemics, such as COVID-19 and here in the US, civil unrest as well, how those are also shaping the way that we will practice now and beyond. And so I wanted to put this quote in here that it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one that is most responsive to change. Because we know that change is what helps to shape us. We keep our fingers on the pulse of the needs, the services, of the resources that our clients need. And it's important time now that we talk about those changes and what those changes will, and those implications of those changes, and what that will mean for the future of social work, what that will mean for social workers that are practicing. What will the clients need from us? And as we think about that, and as we change with the currents of things that's going on, and as we change in terms of the needs in response to the needs of what our clients need, it's important that we will have to take care of ourselves, right? We will have to make sure that our needs are met so that we can effectively change and meet the needs of the clients that we serve. And I like this quote. It says, "To change is difficult." And we all know that change is difficult. And I think that we grasp that concept because we often talk to our clients about change. But we know that not changing is fatal. And as we talk about the future of social work, refusing to change, not taking care of ourselves, feeling like we have to sacrifice ourselves in order to take care of our clients, which is kind of an old way of thinking, that is actually fatal to our profession. We want to think futuristically. We want this profession to continue to rise and continue to excel. So, in order to do that, we have to make sure that we are excelling in taking good care of ourselves. And so let's just step back a moment and think about the global definition of the social work profession. Now, I got this directly from the IFSW website. And one of the things I want you to hone in on is how social work engages people and structures to address life challenges and enhance well being. Okay? So we address life challenges and enhance well-being. So if we're going to do that, we have to be models for our clients as well. Whether you work with organizations or whether you work with individuals, we have to model that. And in order to model that, we have to be well. Because hear me, we're going to talk about various things that's important in terms of self-care. We're going to talk about the importance of ethics and ethical principles. But hear this, the most effective tool that you'll ever use will be you. Your clients come to you because of the skills that and the knowledge that you have, what you actually bring to the table. You are the most valuable tool that you will use in terms of building that rapport with clients, in terms of building and establishing that therapeutic alliance with clients. And if you are not well yourselves, your ability to build that rapport, your ability to establish that therapeutic alliance will be compromised. We want you, and I want for my clients as well. We want to show up. We want to show up with the best versions of ourselves. And in order to do that, again, self-care is of the utmost importance. So I want to talk about self-care as an ethical consideration. I've been doing this for several years now, been in the profession for several years, and what I know from my personal experience and also from professional experiences as well is that as helping professionals, we are really, really good at helping others. We're really, really good at finding resources for others, but we are horrible at taking care of ourselves. We want to continue to provide competent and ethical services to our clients, right? We want to continue to make sure that we are not doing any harm to our clients, correct? So when I look at it and when I encourage social workers from the perspective, through the ethical lenses of our ethical responsibility as a social worker to make sure that we're competent and ethical and that we're not doing any harm, then I'm able to get social workers to accept the fact that self care is important. So, in terms of an ethical consideration, in terms of self care, IFSW, in terms of the ethical guidelines, it states social workers, we have a duty to take the necessary steps to take care of ourselves, both personally and professionally, to take care of ourselves in the workplace, in our private lives, and in society. So there you have it. As an ethical guideline, you now have permission. Remember, we said that we want to remain ethical, we want to remain competent. We promise that we will not do any harm to our clients. And again, here we are. We want to make sure that we understand that taking care of ourselves is not selfish, but it's actually an ethical responsibility, an ethical consideration, a strong one, might I add. And also, when we do that, we are modeling for our clients as well. We are modeling and we're actually practicing what we preach.
So I thought it would be befitting to share with you some ethical pitfalls, some common ethical pitfalls that are common within the social work profession. I use the acronym DIG, basically based off of an article produced by Dr. Frederick Reamer, who is a social work expert in ethics in the United States. And, these particular areas lead way to ethical pitfalls. So one is desperation. Maybe a social worker is in terms of desperate for affluence, possibly respect, and sometimes desperation associated with finances. And that would lead a social worker to commit fraudulent activity or maybe to claim on insurance claims services that they really did not render. Another one, which we're going to go more in depth in this presentation, is actually impairment. And when I say impairment, I'm talking about social workers that maybe have dealt with mental illnesses or substance use issues that have not been properly addressed, and so much so that it has begun to impair their professional judgment and ability to provide competent and ethical social work services. Another one is greed. Again, maybe the social worker wants affluence. Maybe they are in need of financial resources. So, again, greed may negatively influence a social worker to render unethical services, and then that social worker can find themselves in pitfalls. So I included this in this presentation to provide a form of self-awareness for you, self-awareness as we move forward, because again, with the lack of self-care and with the social worker being impaired, you're more susceptible to these particular ethical pitfalls, and I think it's just important to be aware of them. So here is actual language from the NASW Code of Ethics. NASW stands for the National Association of Social Workers, and it's in the United States. I put this language in here because oftentimes, again, as I have traveled and I provide workshops and staff development for helping professionals and social workers, what I know is that oftentimes as helping professionals, as social workers, we don't give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves. We say that we don't have time for it. We feel as if, what'll happen to my client if I take some time off? What'll happen to my client if I'm not able to show up to work today? And when I present it through the lenses of it's an ethical consideration, there is an ethical responsibility attached to taking care of yourself, because addressing professional impairment is an ethical responsibility, the narrative changes for social workers and helping professionals. They say, you know what? In order to take care of myself, in order to take care of my clients, I have to take care of myself. The first section in section 2.08 is the impairment of colleagues. And what I share is that we are our colleagues' keeper. You know, if we think about, as we scale and think about and brainstorm about the global agenda for our profession, we have to think about legacy building. We have to think about longevity. We just have to be futuristic. And in order for us to do that, we have to be our colleagues' keeper. We have to continue to hold our colleagues accountable to make sure that they are providing the best services and competent and ethical services for their clients. And impairment can get in the way of that. If you have knowledge or concerns for a colleague in terms of them possibly suffering from impairment, it's your responsibility to act accordingly. And that may look like talking with that social worker. It may look like contacting the licensing boards or regulatory boards. It's important that you protect the client and also try to protect your colleague. Now, if we're going to hold our colleagues accountable, we have to hold ourselves accountable as professionals, right? So that's where section 4.05 comes in. Again, as a social work professional, we have to look at ourselves and we have to make sure we're practicing self-awareness as well. So we can't allow our personal problems, psychological distress, legal issues, substance use issues, mental health difficulties, and the lack of addressing those in an appropriate manner, we cannot allow that to impede upon our services as well. Because what happens is, if we are beginning to practice impaired, if we tell ourselves we don't have time to take off, if we tell ourselves we're actually okay and we're not really practicing self-awareness and not really practicing self-care, it can really, really threaten the vitality of our profession, right? Because an impaired social worker can harm a client, can harm an organization's reputation, can harm the profession of social work as a whole, right? So again, we want to be aware of professional impairment. So what is professional impairment? Simply put, professional impairment, it impedes on the professional's ability to function professionally. Depending on where you live and what country you live in, I know that you have particular professional guidelines, professional codes of ethics. In the United States, I know we really adhere to the NASW Code of Ethics. ethics and the laws that govern our states, impairment can impede upon us actually carrying out those particular guidelines and requirements. Also, it impedes on your ability to provide competent and ethical care, which in turn can harm your clients. And again, we talked about it impedes your ability to adhere to the codes of ethics. So, what are some factors that actually lead to impairment, Terricka? Well, I'm glad you asked. So, again, burnout, and we're going to talk about burnout here in a few moments. Mental illness that has not been addressed, physical illness. You know, there was a research study that was done on helping professionals, which included social workers. Those particular social workers were actually suffering from burnout, and it looked at what particular parts of the body it affected negatively the most. And most of the time when I'm in a live workshop, I have the workshop attendees to try to guess which part of the body it negatively affected the most. It affected most the stomach area, gastrointestinal issues. There's a physical aspect of impairment as well. Alcohol and drug use, again, cognitive impairment, that's dementia, TBI, memory issues, relationship issues. How many of you know that personal problems that are not addressed can bleed into the way that we practice? Because we're people first. So we have personal relationships that really matter to us. As a matter of fact, generally in social work, you really honor relationships. Quite naturally, relationships are important to us. We value relationships. So if our personal relationships, if we're having issues there, yes, it can impede on the way that we provide services if it's not addressed. Vicarious traumatization and then the lack of self-care are all factors that lead to impairment. So what exactly is burnout? Now, burnout is a form of impairment, right? Burnout is a prolonged psychological response to chronic stressors. I want to hone in on the word prolonged because some of you looking and listening to this presentation, you may say, Terricka, I was burned out yesterday, but today I'm good. I'm not burned out. I am okay. I would submit to you that you were probably not experiencing burnout per se. Maybe you was experiencing some emotional exhaustion, some depersonalization, but not necessarily burnout in its full capacity. People that really burned out to the core, it actually takes about 2 years to fully recover. That's 2 years to fully recover. Can you imagine that? So again, that's why professional self-care, personal self-care is important as we talk about and shape the global agenda for social work. There are 3 dimensions of burnout. So here's how burnout begins to form. First of all, it's that emotional exhaustion. You're feeling depleted, you're feeling overextended. Really, it's a different type of fatigue. It's that type of fatigue where you get a long nap and you still wake up tired. There's nothing that can really quench your fatigue. And so because you're emotionally exhausted, it goes into depersonalization. That's when you have those negative attitudes towards clients. That's when you're praying, you're wishing, and you're hoping for clients to cancel their sessions. That's when you have a 10 a.m. appointment with a client and your client pulls up, you see them, and you go to your break room and you hide in the break room. You used to be someone that loved taking on challenging clients. You love working on additional initiatives and etc. But now you have a negative or cynical type of attitude towards the work that you do and towards clients. You are beginning possibly the phase or the dimension of depersonalization. Now, what depersonalization is, the beginning to be disengaged in the work that you do. And how many of you know that we have to be fully engaged in the work that we do with our clients, right? Because in order to build that rapport that's effective and that therapeutic alliance that's effective, we need to be engaged, right? So if I had to put burnout on a spectrum, I would say that there's burnout and then there is engagement. So if you as a professional can remain engaged in the work that you do, it can help to prevent burnout. So now you're emotionally exhausted, you're now not engaged in the work that you do, and now you don't feel accomplished. You don't feel like you're effective anymore. People are probably giving you accolades at work, telling you you're doing a good job, but you still don't feel effective. Now here's what burnout is not. Burnout is not just a normal reaction to stress, okay? We all have the automatic stress response system. It's not compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue and burnout, often they're used interchangeably. They are slightly different. It's not just pure laziness, it's not incompetence. Individuals that are most likely to become burned out are not your mediocre social workers that just come to work and do the bare minimum for the job. The social workers that often burn are the ones that were on fire, the ones that were the star employees, the ones that always volunteered for initiatives, volunteered to take on challenging clients, volunteered really engaged, but didn't manage that engagement. So incompetence and burnout, they are not the same. They know what they're doing. They're competent. They lack that self-awareness. It's not anxiety, so to speak. It's not depression. Anxiety and depression can be indicators of being burned out, having anxious thoughts, or disengaged from the work that you do. It's not vicarious traumatization. Grief or burnout is not an individual issue, and we're going to talk about that. If you are a supervisor or a leader or an organization that employs social workers, understand that it's not just the social worker's responsibility in terms of helping them to recover from burnout. Again, there are some things that you as an organization can do to support your social workers, and we're going to talk about how. Now, the effects of burnout. Burnout can impede your thinking. It can cause some confusion, impair judgment. Again, we talked about the need for competent professional judgment. Impaired decision making, impairs your ability to prioritize tasks. And how many of you know that we often have a long list of things to do as social workers? Prioritization and time management is key in the work that we do, right? In order to do it efficiently. It affects our mood. Again, we talked about the emotional exhaustion. When we're exhausted, we're not in the best of mood, right? And then there's no sense of accomplishment. Again, irritability, having those depressed thoughts and anger, and then the somatic functioning. Again, I think the physical effects of burnout are oftentimes, we have to make sure that we're aware of those and the signs and the symptoms that our bodies are giving us and telling us to wait a minute, we need to slow down, wait a minute, it's time, please take care of me. Your body is talking to you. So again, it can impede your sleep, medical concerns. Again, I talked about the gastrointestinal issues, and then behavioral functioning, feeling like you're isolated. Sometimes individuals that are experiencing burnout find themselves in a state of isolation. So you're feeling impaired on the job as well. Now, compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is a state of exhaustion and dysfunction. It could be biologically, it could be socially, physiologically, psychologically. It's a result of prolonged exposure to compassion stress. So basically, stress from our job. Some of the symptoms could be the anger, the blaming, not feeling accomplished. It could be compulsive behavior. You find yourself overspending or overeating. Being a workaholic. When I say workaholic, I'm talking about coming to work early, staying late, not giving your time for your social activities. Also, not having boundaries. Can I tell you that boundaries are important? You maintaining and honoring your boundaries as a professional, it actually models appropriate boundaries for your clients. Absenteeism. Now, again, this is really important. Absenteeism is also a feature of burnout. This is important because, again, you're not showing up to work because you're not feeling well. When you don't get proper rest, it's difficult for your body to fight off illnesses. So again, if you're not feeling well, then you can't come into work. Compassion fatigue can really weigh in on your body and have some somatic issues as well. So what are some signs of impairment? Again, our bodies can tell us that there's some issues going on. The fatigue, insomnia, the headaches, the self-doubt, remember, because there's that lack of feeling accomplished anymore. The loss of motivation, procrastinating. Again, especially for the star employees that like to get things done, you find yourself procrastinating. You can't really, it's difficult to complete a task often. Becoming easily frustrated, the late arrivals. With late arrivals, and then you're leaving work early. Feeling kind of numb, like I don't care anymore. And sometimes you're just feeling like you can't focus. So those are some signs of impairment. Now, why is it important for us to know this? Because again, I just shared with you that as we look and as we scale and as we begin to legacy build for the field of social social work, it's important for us to identify those signs in ourselves so that we can properly address that. And then it's important for us to identify signs in our colleagues as well. So I often hear individuals that I work with to move past burnout. I often hear statements like this: I'm tired. I've given so much of myself for so long that this work is not even fulfilling to me anymore. How many of you know that in order to be effective, this work really has to be fulfilling? It doesn't really just require us to just haphazardly do things. Now, we have to fully commit to showing up and commit to getting in the trenches and working with our clients. But in order to do that, we have to have something that resonates with us. We have to have our values and the reasons why we got into this profession, so that the work that we do, although it's challenging, that is fulfilling. And really the concern in this quote that I added is, it's just a job to me now. So, when it becomes just a job and not necessarily, there's not a conviction or a passion behind the work that you do anymore, that's really dangerous. And it's really time for us to step back and get some help. Professional impairment is not just a professional's issue only. Organizations, if you are an organization that employs social workers, it's important that you do some things, to put some things in place to foster assistance for your social workers and your professionals. Also, as a whole, social work profession globally, at the macro level, there are some things that can be done as well to help organizations and to help social workers to take care of themselves as well. So what are some detrimental effects to impairment? Why is it so important as we begin to talk about global concerns, the global agenda for social work for the next years? What are some detrimental effects to impairment if social workers are not properly taking care of themselves? One, professional negligence, right? We all can agree that our goal when we show up to work every day, our goal was not to be negligent in caring for our clients, right? Our goal was to help them to move past particular barriers to meet the goals, right? It was to do no harm, but it was to help. So lack of personal or professional insight. If you don't get anything out of this presentation, what I want you to know is there are several evidence-based practices out there, evidence-based strategies out there, but hear me when I say that the most effective tool you'll use is yourself. Your experience, your expertise, the knowledge that you've garnered and gained over the years in this particular profession, that is what sets you apart. That is what the client is looking for when they show up in your office. They are looking for your unique way in helping them. Sure, it's shaped by evidence-based practices and competent and ethical practices, sure. But again, you are the most important tool in this therapeutic alliance, in establishing this therapeutic alliance. So when you lack that personal and professional insight, it impedes on that. It impedes on the helping relationship. It impedes on the service delivery system as a whole. It decreased work productivity. Again, not getting things done. Again, not seeing as many clients because you don't have the capacity to do so anymore. Again, ethical infractions. Well, I don't think anyone that's vested in this profession wakes up every day and say, oh, I think I want to behave unethically. But it happens. The lack of sound judgment, and then the negative perceptions of the social work profession, right? I know that when people ask us our profession and we identify ourselves as social workers, right, we represent our profession and we want to do that with pride. We want to do that with the best versions of ourselves, right? So again, it's important that we exude a positive light of our profession. Again, now are able to understand how professional self-care can help to prevent professional impairments such as burnout and compassion fatigue in terms of the social work profession, and how it's very important as we begin again to talk about the global agenda for social work. So again, self-care is important, and it should be a social work priority at the micro level, at the meso level, which means organizations and communities, and then also at the macro level. And so here, now I'm going to shift gears and we're going to talk about various strategies under each level that could be done that you should consider as we begin to employ professional self-care as an ethical consideration, and really as an ethical consideration for competent and ethical practice. Before we talk about actual ways and strategies that you can promote self care as a professional and within the profession of social work, I wanted to share with you one of my favorite videos. I often share this video with colleagues, and often I'll pull up this video and watch it as well to encourage me to take the much needed time to invest in myself for self care.
The truth is, you don't have anything to give that you don't have. So you have to keep your own self full. That's your job. One of my daughters is here today from Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy. Stand up today so everybody can see you. You're going to end your first year soon. Oh my God, it's first year. I say to my girls all of the time that your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself. Because you only when you're full, I'm full, I'm overflowing, my cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself. It's miraculous when you think about it. First of all, for me, my father and mother never married. They had sex one time underneath an oak tree because she was wearing a poodle skirt in 1953. And my dad, to this day, says, I want to know what's under that skirt. That's what I want to know. He wanted to know what was under the skirt. They didn't really have a relationship. She wanted one, but, he went under the skirt and then that was it. And one time under the oak tree, bam, Renaissance.
Woman is born. It happened there.
That's why I know my life is bigger than that. My life has to be bigger, as yours is, bigger than a poodle skirt. It's much bigger. The design, the reason why I'm here is much bigger than, I think I want to see what's under there. So the ability to take care of that, to honor yourself and that which is greater than yourself, that which was the reason for your being here. That there's no selflessness in that. Because only through that do you have the ability to offer yourself, your whole self, your full expression of who you are.
So that is actually one of my favorite videos. I actually show that video often as I travel and perform staff development and workshops for social workers and organizations, especially helping professionals. And I really like that video, and I use that video myself in order to encourage myself and to remind myself to, hey, it's okay to step back for a moment and practice some self-care. The topic of self-care and professional resilience is really, really near and dear to my heart because years ago, unfortunately, I lost a mentor. And at the time, I did not know anything really about professional impairment. I didn't really know much about burnout, but her passing, her death, it actually compelled me to look more into it. Now, I'm not a medical physician, but in hindsight, I'm not a medical physician to be able to say, oh, she passed from burnout. I know that's not the case. But in hindsight, as I have, made the commitment for the last 4 to 5 years in researching professional resilience, in researching wellness, in researching professional and personal self-care, what I can tell you is that my mentor was exhibiting some signs of professional impairment. And unfortunately, I wish I would have known the information that I know now, because maybe I could have brought this to her awareness and possibly something could have been done. But in terms of what that video was talking about, what really resonated with me is the fact that it's important for us to keep ourselves full. And the fact that being full of yourself does not have to have a negative connotation. I like the way she talked about how you want to be so full of yourself that your cup overflows. And if you look at the background in this picture, it's a cup on a saucer and it's overflowing, because it's important for us to overflow because of the type of work that we do. We meet clients at one of the most perplexed and complex times in their lives often. They experience crisis. Right now, they're experiencing a pandemic, and we are as well. They experience a civil unrest. There's a lot of things that's going on right now and have gone on in the past in our clients' lives. And so there's a lot of things that go on in our lives personally, if we are honest. And so it's important that we are armed with self-care strategies and resilience tools to help build and to help keep ourselves full. Now, why is it important for us to overflow? Because if you look at this picture in the background, the overflowing part, the part that's on the saucer, that's the part that your clients get from you. That expertise, your skill, just the essence and the uniqueness of you and how you practice. That's why your clients keep showing up. That's why your clients need you. And so that's why it's important. It's the substance that's in the cup, that's for you. You need yourself to be full, and the overflowing part is the part that your clients get to experience. And so, but we can't serve from an empty cup. And we don't need to be serving from our cup. We need to serve from the overflowing part. So in terms of micro self-care, I know that when we talk about micro self-care, we talk about relationships and building alliances with individual clients, and that's important. But when I talk about micro self-care from the professional self-care aspect, I'm talking about that relationship, that one of the most important relationships that you'll have, and that's the relationship with yourself. And so as we build self-awareness, and if we build a lifestyle of self-care, it's important that we understand our relationship with ourselves and that we're practicing awareness to know what we need. And when we're building and when we're trying to sustain a lifestyle of self-care, it's important to know that slow and steady builds sustainability. If you're not good at practicing self-care, if you haven't really been practicing it, it's not really smart to make a huge goal right now. Make some slow improvements, be intentional, and be steady about it, and you'll see how that builds stamina and sustainability for you. Now, small, frequent practice plus practicality builds benefits. Those small intentional things that you do, that now that we've talked about self-care, now that you're understanding the importance of it, the small and frequent practice and making sure that these are some practical things to start you off, they equal big benefits. So what are some practical things? Get moving. Exercise is really important. Our bodies were designed to move. And so as you think about work, as you think about your position that you hold and the responsibilities throughout the day-to-day demands of the work that you do, how can you infuse movement into your day? How can you intentionally infuse movement into your day? Is it that you decide to stand up and do some steps while you're on that conference call? Is it that while you're on the phone calling and coordinating services, maybe you stand up if you're able to and you practice some steps, or you walk around your office? What can you do? Is it when you're feeling sluggish and you're looking at the computer screen and you're realizing you're not getting any work done anyway, that you step back for a moment and you go and walk around your office? What can you do? One of the things that I did some time ago is that I joined forces with some colleagues. And what we did was we had a work group. And what we did was at lunchtime, we walked for 15 minutes. We met at lunchtime and we walked for 15 minutes. And the other part of my lunchtime I use to actually eat, because we know that nutrition is important as well. We have to eat. But again, that really, really built camaraderie amongst my colleagues, cohesiveness. And it was something that I actually looked forward to because I wasn't necessarily doing it alone. And I felt good because I was doing something for myself. Deep breathing. As we move from meeting to meeting, from case to case, from client to client, task to task, take a moment and stop and breathe. Oftentimes we notice sometimes we're not even taking deep breaths. We're stressed, or we're experiencing maybe a crisis at the job, or a client is experiencing a crisis. So it's important to just breathe. And sometimes you may want to do like me, put up a sign to say breathe, just breathe, to remind yourself to practice some deep breathing. Getting adequate rest. Listen, getting adequate rest is really, really important. Why? Because it's during the rest that our bodies actually rejuvenate and replenish itself during our sleep time. We give out a lot of energy during the day. We are giving out a lot of ourselves, a lot of our energy and brain power, to come up with creative resources, creative responses and solutions to help our clients along the way. And then we come home, and then we're parents, and we're spouses, and we're friends. We give out a lot throughout the day, and it's important that we allow our bodies to rest and replenish. So what are some things that you can do, especially right now with stay-at-home orders and with what's going on? I know a lot of us are working from home, and it's so easy to bring your laptop, bring your work into the bedroom and prop it up in your bed and to do your work. But you know what? It's important that you have a designated space for sleep. Because if your bedroom is associated with work, if your bedroom is associated with other things, it's hard for your mind to wind down. So it's important, and it's good to have a place in your home that's designated for work, and a place in your home that's designated for sleep. And while I'm on it, it's important to take good breaks at work as well, and good breaks throughout the day. Do you know what research shows is that the most that we could really, really focus in terms of the longest time frame is 90 minutes. And you're expecting yourself to work straight 5 hours without a break. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a moment. Get adequate rest, and then also take adequate breaks. Attend your medical and mental health appointments. When I'm talking with a colleague and when I'm helping a professional move past burnout in one of our sessions, one of the things that I talk to them about is, if they're talking to me, what would you say to a client that's experiencing what you're experiencing right now? What would you say to a client? And immediately, before my very eyes, I see the narrative of that professional shift, because we are so good at extending grace to others, extending grace to our clients, that we don't extend grace to ourselves. The advice that you give clients to attend medical appointments and mental health appointments, do that for yourself. And it's absolutely okay for you to see a mental health professional. I actually encourage it. Journaling has major benefits. I absolutely love writing. I love processing my thoughts, processing the happenings of the day through journaling. It gives meaning to my day. It gives meaning to that challenge that I had, that I felt like was going to take me out for the day. It gives meaning to it, and it helps me to want to show up the next day. So again, journaling is really good. Adult coloring, believe it or not, adult coloring is a new phenomenon, and hey, it's shown to have some really, really great benefits. It helps to distract you. It helps to take your mind off of what's going on just for a few moments, for you to steal away and dive into the world of coloring, the psychology of colors. Again, there's so many things that you could do. Identifying a hobby that's unrelated to social work, taking time off. I know that we tell ourselves the narrative, what will happen to this client if I take off? Who's going to take care of my caseload if I take off? What you need to understand is that if you decide to take another position tomorrow, or if for some reason you are not able to continue to do your job, know that your organization will have your job description and your job posted within a matter of days. What we fail to realize is that we can be replaced. Now, we don't want to have to be replaced, but we can. And so it's important to know that just as someone, as your organization would replace you with someone that would take over your caseloads, the same thing can happen if you just take a day off. It's okay to take a day off and to take time to unplug. And if I had to tell you a self-care strategy that is being researched more and more day by day, and that would also be cost effective, I would say that it would hands down be to practice gratitude. Uh, Practicing and fostering with intentionality a lifestyle of gratitude really, really has strong benefits. It helps to shift your perspective and the way that you view things. I talked about depersonalization earlier as one of the dimensions of burnout. Practicing gratitude could really, really help to curtail that, and it could help to, again, change your perspective, especially if you have been experiencing some cynicism. Getting sunlight. If you are fortunate enough to have a window in your office, if you are fortunate enough to have access to sunlight or a window in your office or within your agency or organization, utilize that. When you find yourself staring at the computer and you're not getting any work done, go and look outside. If you can, go outside for a moment to get a breath of fresh air and enjoy some sunlight. So these are a few strategies that can help you at the micro level. Next, we'll talk about strategies that you could utilize at the meso level. So here's some things that you could put into place to promote self-care at the meso level. Now, when we talk about the meso level, we're talking about organizations, peer groups, and communities. We're talking about groups here, and particularly organizations. If you are a supervisor of an organization, and even if you're a professional, maybe you don't serve in leadership, there is a place for you in your organization where you could work to build promotion of self-care and professional resilience. And it's important that we promote a culture of wellness and that we understand that it's not only the professional's responsibility alone to promote that culture, but that the organization has some responsibility in that partnership as well. And so when the professional and the organization begin to partner together to build this culture of wellness, it's more successful. So what are some things that organizations can do that employ social workers and helping professionals alike? What are some things that they can do to build and foster a culture of wellness and promotion of self-care? Number one, it's important that you are, as an organization, that you are transparent with your worker about the roles and the expectations of their workload demands. So it's important that one of the things that causes or that leads to professional impairment is unclear job demands. They don't know what to expect. They don't know the expectations. And so it's important that you have position descriptions and that you have opportunities to where workers can ask questions and understand the responsibilities and their roles, what's being asked of them to help curtail that. And also in terms of transparency, it's important if your workers generally have a caseload of 30, it's important to not promise workers that they're going to have a caseload of 10. It's important that we're honest and that if the position requires travel, make sure that you're honest with your workers so that they can know and they could hopefully promote and practice some self-awareness to make sure that they're making a good decision in terms of job fit. Also, when we talk about caseloads, it's important that organizations perform audits from time to time in terms of caseload, case assignments, what's working, what's not, and how you can actually make it better. Because, for example, we all know that all clients and all cases are not necessarily created equal. There are indeed some clients in some cases that require more work and more attention, more services and more follow-up than others. And so if you have workers that have a heavy caseload of those more intensive type of challenges, more intensive type of clients and cases, then hey, they may have 15 cases versus other workers who don't necessarily have intensive cases or clients on their caseload. They may have 30. So again, it's really important that you look at and you audit your caseloads and case assignments on a regular basis. Sufficient salaries and benefits. I know that that's a taboo topic, but it's really important. Making sure that you are competitive with your salaries and your benefits and paying your workers, that's really important and something to consider. Accessible and supportive supervision. That is a big one. Listen, people don't leave organizations, they leave leadership and they leave supervisors, just to be honest. And so it's important as if you're a supervisor listening, as supervisors, I know we encourage our workers to build that therapeutic alliance, to build that rapport with clients, to get to know their clients. And so I want to encourage you as your supervisor. I want to encourage you as a supervisor to get to know your supervisees, get to know your employees. And I like to use the framework of, to my employees, the clients are important. To me as the supervisor, my employees are important. It's important that way everyone is feeling a sense of value, being valued and being seen and being heard. So it's important that they know that they have that supportive supervision. Now, as social workers, we promote strength-based perspective and strength-based work. We also promote client-centered work. And so with that, we ask our clients, how can we help you? What are some goals that you have? And I think that practice, it needs to be transferred over into our supervision, our relationships with supervisors and their professional. Again, how can I support you? Yes, I'm providing you back as a supervisor, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to provide feedback as a professional as well. And so together, we will establish a working partnership. Having safe physical workstations. Do your employees feel safe at their workstations? If your employees do a lot of field work, do they feel safe out in the field? If not, what are some things that they're asking for? What do they need to feel safe? What would help them to feel safer? Also, as we're talking about physical workstation, I want to encourage you to let you know that to look around your workstation and to identify, is the workspace here? Is it inspiring? What type of colors do we have in our offices? Again, do we have spaces or areas in our workspace that promotes collaboration? Meaning, do we have break rooms? Do we have huddle areas? Do we have spaces that promote collaboration and provide opportunities for our workers to steal away for a moment when they're having a challenging day or they just need to unplug for a moment? Access to healthcare coverage and employee assistance programs. Again, those type of investments in your workers, they speak volumes. Access to continuing education programming related to self-care. Keeping the conversation of self-care and resilience going. Talking about it, making it a part of the conversation, and investing in training and professional development is really important. Having confidential and non-punitive treatment to assist impaired workers. Again, that employee assistance program could really help with that. A big one is leadership actually modeling self-care and wellness. My supervisor practices self-care. I'm going to practice self-care. As a supervisor, you practice self-care and then you encourage your workers to practice self-care. And then this one is really important. If you work a lot with crisis management, with trauma cases and individuals and groups, it's really important that you provide a safe space for your workers to debrief and process some of the workplace stressors that come along with that. You would be surprised how powerful that avenue, that strategy, it really is, because again, when you provide that opportunity to allow them to debrief and process, it builds cohesiveness in your organization. It allows workers to feel seen and feel supported and understood. It could also provide opportunities for your workers who may have some challenging cases to obtain feedback that could possibly help them with a particular challenging case. And now we're talking about promoting professional self-care at the macro level. And when I talk about the macro level, I'm talking about big picture wise. I'm talking about things that we can do to promote systemic changes to promote self-care in terms of policies and fundings. And these are some things that we could do. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this topic of professional self-care and ethics during this conference is for this very reason. I really think that, again, as we begin to shape the agenda, as we begin to forecast and look forward and to talk about the future of social work, providing and promoting self-care amongst social workers, amongst the organizations that employ social workers, it definitely needs to be a topic of discussion and how we can promote that. And so how can you promote that at the macro level? Promoting policies that honor rights and responsibilities regarding impairment and self-care. Again, we want workers to understand that they have the right to practice self-awareness, and it's important that they are not practicing while impaired, because it could be detrimental to the profession, detrimental to clients, and detrimental to themselves as well. And so we want them to understand that it's a responsibility to make sure that they're checking in with themselves and that they're holding themselves accountable and colleagues accountable. But they also have a right to practice self-care as well. And they won't be punished for doing so. Funding for programming to promote self-care. Again, advocating dollars to organizations, advocating dollars to agencies that promote self-care amongst social workers and helping professionals. Again, that could be utilized for continuing education, that could be utilized for various other opportunities as well to promote self-care. Ensuring employers, advocating for employers to create conditions to optimize employee wellness and safety. Again, incentivizing employers and organizations, giving them the tools and information that they need to be able to implement these particular things within their organizations. Advocating for policies such as tuition debt relief to alleviate financial stress. I mean, we know that social workers, oftentimes the salaries, we would love for our salaries to be bigger, but it would help to alleviate some of the financial stress and stressors that we have if there was some tuition debt relief programs. Now, I know here in the U.S. there are programs that for particular populations, like I believe there are programs for individuals that work in child welfare. You have to work in child welfare for a substantial amount of time, and you could possibly have your loans forgiven. And then there's other debt relief programs, depending on the particular population that you work with, that could possibly qualify. But I think more of these programs are needed. They're needed. And it has everything to do with self-care and has everything to do with impairment. Because sometimes, as I talked about the three main ethical pitfalls for social workers, we talked about greed, we talked about desperation, and sometimes financial stress could land us in a place of greed and desperation and impairment. Funding for more research, definitely more research on professional impairment and evidence-based self-care is needed. Particularly for the field of social work. So having funding at the macro level, putting our money where our mouth is, understanding that investing in these particular endeavors, it helps to build. It helps to build stamina and longevity within the profession. The enforcement of fair and non-discriminatory policies that address professional impairment. Do we have return to work policies in place that would help to guide organizations on how to help a professional that may have taken some time off due to impairment, that help them to help that professional to return back to work safely? Do we have policies in place for that? Do we have guidelines in place for that? So those are some things that you could think about at the macro level. We talked about the meso level, and we talked about the micro level. And here are some resources for you. Again, these are some books that may be available on Amazon and other areas to help you jumpstart professional self-care. Again, this topic is really, really near and dear to my heart. I hope that now your wheels are turning, how you can be a change agent in your own life, how you can intentionally take better care of yourself. What steps do you need to intentionally take? If you are an organizational leader, or if you're a professional, maybe you're not in a leadership position, but you are a change agent for your organization, how can you begin today to take steps to build a culture that promotes professional self-care in your agency? Again, I am Terricka Hardy. It has been a pleasure to share this space with you. I'm the owner of Terricka Hardy Consulting LLC, and here's my contact information for if you would be interested in professional development for your organizations or for your students. Please feel free to contact me via email or my website. And again, I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation and that you're enjoying the conference as a whole. I want to wish you optimal self-care. I want to wish you great resilience and wellness. And as we forecast and move beyond, and as we continue to make the commitment to help our clients, I wish you all the best. Again, thank you so much for this time.